Hello and welcome. Today we're going to do something a little different. We're basically going on an intellectual detective story. Our mission? To track down a huge foundational idea from the Old Testament that, for a long, long time, just vanished. It was pushed to the side, ignored by scholars, and pretty much forgotten. This is the story of how it was found again.
Okay, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll identify this forgotten foundation. Then, we'll build the case for why it was neglected for so long. After that, we'll look at its big comeback, dig into the core disagreement that sparked, and finally, get to the heart of why this one idea really, truly matters.
All right, let's start with the central puzzle, because honestly, when you stop and think about it, this whole thing is a real head-scratcher.
So I want to ask you a question. What's an idea that's so big, so fundamental, that the real mystery is how anyone could have missed it in the first place? Well, the answer is probably not what you're expecting. It's the concept of creation itself. Yeah, you heard that right. According to our source material, the idea of creation has been systematically, underestimated. It was actually marginalized inside the very institutions studying it. And we're not talking about a small oversight here. This is a major, central theme that was basically benched for generations.
Scholar Rolf Rentorf just nails the question perfectly. It's so simple, but so profound. The Hebrew Bible literally starts with creation. So why did so many theological studies for so long just skip it? How is that even possible? That is the mystery we're here to solve.
So, if the idea of creation got shoved into a corner, who, or maybe what, was responsible? Let's go ahead and line up the prime suspects behind this great theological disappearing act.
Believe it or not, our investigation, digging through the source text, points to a lineup of 11 distinct factors. That's right, 11 different forces, intellectual trends, cultural shifts, that all conspired to push the idea of creation into the background.
All right, let's check out the first half of our suspect list. A huge part of the problem was a major shift in focus. For a long time, theology got really interested in just human history and salvation, which kind of left the entire natural world out in the cold. And at the same time, you had the rise of modern science, which made it seem like religion had nothing important to say about nature anymore. All of this was supercharged by philosophical trends that put humanity, not God, not creation, right at the center of the universe.
And the rest of the factors, they all point in the same direction. You've got beliefs that focused only on saving human souls for an afterlife, which, makes this physical world seem kind of temporary and disposable. Some even argued that, hey, if the world's going to end anyway, why bother taking care of it? But when you look at all these suspects together, they all orbit this one central motive, a deep, pervasive human-centeredness.
But the story doesn't just end in neglect. No way. In the last few decades, this old, cold case suddenly went hot. The idea of creation started making a massive comeback. And this, my friends, is where the plot really starts to thicken.
And you can see the huge shift in thinking right here. The old way of looking at it saw creation as just the prologue, right? The opening act before the real show, human history, began. But the new view? It flips the script completely. It argues creation isn't the prologue, it's the entire stage that every other story, including the story of redemption, plays out on.
So what caused this massive turnaround? Well, it was like a perfect storm of a few powerful forces. You had the modern environmental movement forcing us to ask really tough questions about our relationship to the planet. At the exact same time, scholars started looking at ancient texts with totally fresh eyes. Science and religion actually started talking to each other more, and we all just became more aware of how deeply interconnected all life really is.
Now, this comeback didn't happen quietly. Oh no. It kicked off a huge debate among scholars, basically forcing them to rethink everything they thought they knew about the Old Testament's main message.
So it all boils down to this one critical question. What's the main plot here? For centuries, everyone just assumed the answer was redemption. But now scholars are asking, wait a minute, what if we got it backwards? What if the rescue of humanity is just one important chapter in the much grander, ongoing epic of creation itself?
Thinkers like H. Schmidt put it so well. He argued that creation isn't just the scenery for the play. No, it's the comprehensive theological horizon. It's the entire framework that gives meaning to everything else, whether it's justice or history or salvation.
And Rolf Rentorf, the scholar we heard from at the beginning, he really doubles down on this. He argues that this belief in God as creator wasn't some later addition to the faith. It was the fundamental, all-underlying premise. It was the absolute starting point, the core belief that everything else in ancient Israel's faith grew from.
So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, that's a fascinating academic debate, but why should I care? Well, the stakes are so much higher than you might think. This isn't just about rereading old books. It's about how we understand our world right now. And this brings us to the absolute kicker, the stunning conclusion from our source. The argument goes like this. If God is only the God of a certain group of people, or just the God of history, and not the creator of all reality, then that God can't be the one and only God, because that God isn't universal. The very definition of who or what God is on the line.
So the big takeaway here is that putting creation back where it belongs triggers a massive paradigm shift. It redefines God, not as just a character in history, but as the sustainer of the entire cosmos. It reframes humanity's role not as the masters of the world, but as participants within it. And it anchors concepts like justice and righteousness, not just in human laws, but in the very fabric and order of the created world itself.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. If these scholars are right, then how we view the very beginning, our story of creation, might just be the thing that defines everything else we believe about our world, our purpose, and even ourselves. Thanks for joining this explainer.